Hi, Bill.
Hello, hello.
How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. This is one of those days where I'm going from call to call to call. So it's crazy.
Well, yeah, but that's a good crazy.
It is. I kind of run on that.
Yeah,
Somebody said, are you keeping busy? I said, that's never been a problem.
that's great. Well, we have friends of ours who are we happen to all be BNI members,
Yep. Good.
but uh, don't hold that against us.
I
And
see a book on your bookshelf that I just bought myself, Profit First. It's on my stack of reading.
let's talk about that offline because I
Okay.
think you'll enjoy that. We're a profit first professional company, so I'm working hard on bringing that along, and I think
Right.
we'll be there soon. So,
Good.
well, I don't know where Charlie is, and uh, but maybe we can get started. I know we have a timeline, and you do too. So,
It's fine.
anyway, this conversation today, we appreciate Bill Cates being here, uh, and he is a referrals expert. So we can talk in together, hopefully contribute and ask questions. And Bill has been kind enough to join us, and thank you for that. So maybe the best way to be a part of this is to ask Bill to talk a little bit, tell us about some of the things that he's been able to do, and then open it to conversation. And does that sound, if that sounds like a good way to use our time, let's proceed.
Sure. Yeah, I'll create talk about a few overarching principles, strategies a little bit and see where maybe we want to dig in. My only constraint is I have to get a little bit of a bite to eat between now and the top of the hour, but
No
definitely
worries.
get 15, 20, 25 minutes. A few things. The first thing that we always want to think about around getting more referrals is referability. In other words, are we referable? Certainly in a BNI environment, you need to be referable with your members or they're not going to refer you, right?
Yeah.
And you guys know that part of that is really over time, making sure that your processes are explained clearly to each other and how your clients, customers benefit. And that's hard to do in the context of just a meeting. So I know that BNI encourages people to meet outside of the meetings,
Yeah.
make that happen. And also certainly with BNI, you'll find some members that are just move in the circles that you need them to move in to be able to be a source of referrals, and other members don't move in those circles as much, and so you spend more time with the folks that have them are more likely to meet the kind of people you want to meet, right? And that's where you spend that time in becoming as referable as possible. And you don't want that to stay on the surface. You really want to, over time, dig in and show people, this is, I broke down the client or customer journey into kind of three parts. So there's the prospect journey, the prospect experience, how you court your prospects. What does that look like? How do you bring value to them? What are the questions you ask? What are the things you teach, right? How do you bring value to them in that decision process to work with you? Are you selective on who you bring in, and how do you determine that? These are all the things you want to teach your potential referral sources. How do you onboard people into your business, right? What does that look like? What is your onboarding process? How do you stay in touch with clients or customers over time? Is it more transactional? Do you really have these long-term relationships? And what does that look like? Because that's what it takes for someone to really feel good about sending people your way. I mean, it's one thing for someone to give you a lead and say, hey, you should call so-and-so because I think they're looking for what you do. Or for them to say, hey, you should talk to Andrew because, I think he works in this area. No, you got to talk to Andrew. I've seen his process. I know how he works with his clients, right? That's the kind of referral you want, right? You want that recommendation. So it takes time to get people to know that about you, to be able to create that full endorsement. So that's one thing. So you want to create those introductions. Become referable. The other thing is, the next step would be, I call it leverage. How do you ask for referrals, introductions, without looking like an over-aggressive life insurance agent? I work with life insurance agents. I believe in life insurance. I'm talking about the old methodologies that a lot of folks have been taught. Little aggressive, little agent-centered versus client-centered. And so when it comes for asking, and let me make a distinction real quick. You're going to hear me use the word referrals and introductions interchangeably, but when you're with a BNI member, when you're with a client, when you're with a prospect, anybody around this conversation, you want to err on the side of using the word introductions, because you want to get introduced. You got to get connected, right? How do you get on somebody's radar in this world of just marketing message overload and people protecting themselves from hearing from people they maybe think they don't want to hear from? Well, you got to get introduced by someone that they trust. And so that you use that borrowed trust. And so we can say the word referrals, but when you're talking to people who can really do it, use the word introductions. All right. So in asking, a lot of different ways to do this, but I think the most important thing I want to stress in the ask is to narrow their focus when you're doing the ask. In other words, the mistake that most people make is, who do you know who needs this, right? Who do you know I can help, right? If you know anybody that needs this, or you think I can help, I'm here. That usually doesn't create a good result. Occasionally it does, but not most of the time it doesn't. And so when you're with your clients, customers, you're having this or centers of influence, you want to divide it up into categories. It could be specific people they know. That's the best introduction to ask for. I know you know George Smith. How do you feel about introducing me to him? Can we come up with an approach that would feel comfortable? Or
do you feel like LinkedIn is a good place to do that as well? I mean,
it can be. The challenge with LinkedIn, of course, is that not everybody knows everybody they're connected to, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so how do you determine if they know that person well enough to bring that up, to feed them with that possibility? Well, if you're targeting a specific market, that can help. So if they're in that same industry or work for the same company, then that, good chances that the odds are in your favor. What I also like to look at is people who've written the endorsements and the recommendations lower in the profile. So let's say the person on their profile says, Robert Smith, but someone wrote a recommendation that says Bob. Well, and they're in the same industry. Well, odds are pretty good that, Bob knows this person and vice versa well enough to perhaps make an introduction. So that's where I see LinkedIn can work. It's narrowing, right? We got to narrow the perspective so we can determine who would be worth suggesting in the first place. I just got off a coaching call with a gal she's a financial professional. She knows she needs to target a little bit better. She asked for referrals. She doesn't have much success. But one of the things that came out in the call was that she wants to work with successful women business owners. So if she went to a center of influence or anyone that says, let's start with this category. I'm doing a lot of great work with successful women business owners, right? Do you know any successful business owners? If you do, can we talk about how you might introduce me? We're narrowing someone's perspective, so then people will come up in their mind's eye. They'll picture somebody, right? Somebody said to me, successful women business owners, I'm going to think of my friend Marissa. I'm going to think of my friend Susie. I'm going to think of my friend Terry, right? And so that's what we want to do. We don't want to throw open the whole universe. So that's in the asking side of things. We got the being referable. Then we want to leverage and we want to ask. That's one of the most important aspects.
We talk about that every week about don't just ask for a general business for business people, and I'm guilty of that as well. So this kind of helps.
I'm reinforcing what you already know. Andrew, was that a question or you were just stretching? Okay.
He's at work, so.
All good. Yeah.
I could do it.
I'll ask a couple questions later, but thank you, Bill.
No, that's fine. You know, it's like in an auction, sold. And then the next step is the introduction, getting introduced, and we've all experienced this. You know, you're going to call George. You're going to talk to George. Yeah, great. Let me know what he thinks. You know, I'll follow up. Well, you don't know if they ever talk to George, or if someone says, "Call George. Use my name." Well, George doesn't answer his phone. George doesn't know who we are. They're wondering why their friend gave his name out, right? So we got to think in terms of getting connected. Now, for a lot of businesses, the best type of introduction is in person if you can make it happen. Obviously, right now that's not happening for anybody, but eventually, you know, this will thaw, and we can do that. The challenge with the in-person introduction, obviously, is the logistics of making it happen. So if you feel like these people get together a lot for breakfast or lunch or golf course or a drink or whatever, then it's something easy to logistically create, then by all means. What we don't want is the logistics to get in the way and the enthusiasm of the introduction to wane. So then after that, probably the best way to get introduced is with email. And there's three different kinds of emails I've kind of identified. And James, if you remind me to send a little report I've written on this, I'll send it. Now it's built for financial professionals in terms of the language I use, but you'll get it. You'll all see
Great.
how it comply.
Yeah.
So the first one is, and we've all been introduced this way, right? Where your client sends an email to their friend or colleague, and they say, "Hey George, you know, talk to my friend Bill. He's done this great," or talk to Bill Cates. He's done this great work for me. You know, I've CC'd him on this email. I'm sure he'll follow up. You know, you should take his call. That's not bad, right? We see it's gone out. We've been CC'd on it when we now have someone to follow up with. So that's not so bad. What I like the best is what I'll call the email handshake, where, you know, George, meet Bill. Bill's done this work for me, da-da-da. Bill, meet George. You know, we were fraternity brothers, or we grew up together, or whatever. You know, you guys will enjoy talking to each other, have at it, you know. And so that's the handshake, and that's a nice one, because the new prospect can see that their friend or colleague took a little energy to make that connection.
Yeah.
Now, was that a question or no?
No, yes, I agree.
Okay.
Those are good ones.
And then the third one is, I call this the client bump, and you'll see why in a second. If you don't think the person's going to get to that email introduction, because you're kind of beholden on them to do that, or if they just don't get around to it, you know, they drop the ball, then what you can do is you can say, all right, I'll send an email to them. I'll mention your name in the subject line so they know, you know, they don't know me, they know you. They'll open the email. When you see that email come through, can you add to the conversation? Can you say some of those nice things you just said to me, and you know, encourage her to take my call? Oh yeah, I can do that. All right, I'll do that. So now you're sending the email. You use the referral source's name in the subject line, so they open it. You say a little something about yourself, quick little, you know, value prop statement, and then suggest perhaps a short phone call to get the conversation started, hoping that your referral source will see that and then add to the conversation. Even if they don't add to the conversation, you at least are now in touch with this prospect, and hopefully their endorsement will be enough to respond and perhaps set up a phone call. So, you know, you haven't lost total control of the situation. That usually doesn't work as well as the first two, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
So I'm not assumptive about someone's willingness to give referrals. I'm not going to assume that someone's going to automatically feel comfortable introducing me to someone. I'm going to check in. I'm going to make sure they feel okay making that introduction. But once I know they're okay with it, I am going to assume an introduction. I am going to say, let's talk about how you introduced me to Laura. Let's talk about what you say to George so he'll take my call. I am going to assume that, because we know if we don't do that, it may not work. We may be spinning our wheels. And I'll talk about one more thing, and then I'll shut up and we can ask questions. I've written my newest book, Radical Relevance, which is all how we talk about our value. how we narrow our focus perhaps with the target market, how we figure out what the bullseye of that market is, and then how we explain what we do to people in a way that's simple and clear and easy for them to understand. We have to be careful about not being overly creative or clever in how we describe what we do. A little bit's okay, but we don't want that cleverness to get in the way of clarity, because then people will shut down to our message. So that's what that book's about, is the, the borrowed trust that occurs in a referral/introduction will take us so far. We'll usually get on someone's radar. Quite often we'll earn enough trust to get a phone call going. But then at some point, we've got to make sure we talk about our value in a way that's going to grab them, going to bring them in, and then keep the process going. And I found that's often where things break down. The two places I see it break down is either people say they're going to refer or introduce, but it never happens, or they do, and you get connected, but how you follow through and how you talk about your value isn't enough to keep the person interested. So that's kind of what I've been into for the last 25 years.
Wow. Yeah. Great.
Questions, tactical questions.
Yeah, I'm having, if I get a referral, I usually get the first phone call, maybe the second phone call with an email, and then it kind of dies. So I think that helping me be relevant and understand, so people can understand my value, is a really good concept, and I've been working on that. But
well, one of the things you can do is to use your referral source to help with that, right?
Yeah.
You want to learn as much as you can about this friend, colleague, family member of theirs, and one of the questions you can ask is what's going on in their life that's really important to them, or what's going on in their business that's really important to them, whatever fits the context. And so if you can angle this introduction and how you follow through on what you know is on the forefront of their radar in their life, their business, then that will help. It'll resonate with them. This is where also targeting very clear markets makes a real difference. And I don't know the businesses you guys are in, so this is a generic piece of advice, but the more narrow, the better, generally speaking, because we get to know their world better and we know the questions they ask. Sometimes the questions we ask demonstrate knowingness of their business or knowingness of their situation. The biggest thing in both marketing and sales, the biggest word I can think of is empathy. How we talk about what we do has to display empathy for that we have a knowingness of their situation, the challenges they face, the opportunities that are in front of them. And so that often will help pull people towards us, and they will have a sense that we know their world and they're willing to talk to us further.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Donald Miller with Story Brand, but
I do. I have a chapter in my book that's devoted to his stuff.
I'll have to. I'll send us a link to your book, and I'll post that too, so we can offer that. But yes, empathy, and then he points out very rightly, it's empathy and expertise. So you've got to you show people that you're empathetic, but then you know how to help them. Yeah,
exactly. It's one thing to kind of stir the pot a little bit and show people you understand the challenges they may be going through, and even dig into those a little bit, and get it a little excited, the molecules excited around that challenge. But if you don't do it in a way that you're presenting yourself as a solution to that, then it can die very quickly. In fact, they get aggravated. So I got 4 questions. I have a study group that we met with Zoom last night, and I'll just throw these out to you guys. I tried it on my last call, and I got through part of it. I'm still playing with it. I deliver these, what I call them a strategy session, complimentary strategy session. It's a half an hour, 25 minutes of it or more is devoted to what can I do to help you? And then, 3, 4, 5 minutes at the end is here's how I might be able to help you, right? Further. And so it's, what's your number one goal right now, or what's your objective, or, I try to get people thinking a little bigger picture than an immediate thing. Why is it important to you, right? Why is this thing you want to do important? What's stopping or slowing you down? Right? So we're talking a little bit about the obstacles there, which usually has an emotional response to it to some degree. And then how would it affect or impact you if you didn't achieve the goal, right? What's the cost to you of not moving forward?
Mm.
And so it was just my first attempt this morning with a couple of calls. I got a few of them in. But just getting people to get attached or to think about what is their goal, what do they want, what's stopping them, what's the cost of doing nothing? It's a big question. It's a good question. And you don't have to say it in those exact words.
Right.
But that's what creates people to move forward usually, because they know what they want to do. They know the problem that they have, hopefully. Maybe you had to bring that to light. But then, then people get stuck in making a decision because they don't feel like it's, compelling enough. If the pain isn't high enough, often people won't move. And the other part is clarity, right? You got to make sure you communicate how you would help them solve that problem in a way that's very clear. And this is something I'm working on continually, because I know that sometimes how I explain how I can fix the problem isn't always as clear as it needs to be. And that's one of my obstacles, or one of the things I'm working on myself. And so that's what will help people move forward if they have clarity on what that next step is and what we're going to try to accomplish in that next step.
Yeah, I agree, and I have that problem too. But I'm working on it. I think we all are. But
Of course.
Yeah.
It's always a work in progress.
It is.
Any questions, guys, gals? Fred,
Hey, Bill.
Fireflies. I love that name. Is Fred? Is that your real name, Fireflies?
No, that's a recording.
Oh, okay.
It's-
All right.
Oh,
I heard a hey, Bill. Yes.
hey,
Please.
Bill. Bill, my name is Bob Sorensen. I'm part of the Gold Coast BNI, a good group, and I appreciate Jim's putting this together, and particularly your insights. Obviously, the word referral, obviously, it's an introduction, right? The introductions often, as you noted, lead to emails. And, this current environment we're in is atypical to obviously what we've all experienced. But it's always the individual's personal environment, what's going on with their lives, how they interact, what value are we bringing and offering, and how we tailor it. So I think the importance of the communication is so, so really the most important component is that communication. So the emails that go through, and I find, good, solid introductions. And not always, my business is, I'm in the disaster restoration business, right?
Okay.
I'm with Service Master, and our franchise covers Fairfield and Westchester. So we're kind of varied, and we will work with Hobbs, a high-end luxury home builder, and one end doing post-construction, small margin, and we'll go out today. We have many teams doing decontamination for COVID-19. But it's very difficult to kind of, get down. My clients are insurance professionals, right? I need to be referred. So when your, supply line breaks, it's taking those and being able to communicate it. And even with the fire marshals, that we're not chasing, I'm not an ambulance chaser. I'm an attorney, and I appreciate all the attorneys, the real estate attorneys that we have in all of our groups. So I think what you hit on is really just what the initial introductions are done through emails, and to be concise and effective. And just, I don't know if there's any other points, your radical relevance coming out, cleverness versus clarity. So in other words, we have fun, but be careful. This is all serious business.
Right.
So
yeah. So yeah, a comment on that is to get a good email introduction, you want to talk to the person that's introducing you. You want to teach them how to introduce you well. And it's not always easy. I'll give you an example. I wanted to get introduced to write a column for this magazine once, and I said to my friend and colleague Ian, I said, "Can you introduce me?" He said, "Sure, I'd be happy to." I said, "Great. I want to talk to you about what you say. I want to talk to you about how you describe what I do before you do it." And he said, "Okay." So about a week goes by, and I sent him an email. I said, can we talk about that introduction? He says, all right, I already sent him an email and they're not interested. So it's easier said than done. And we want to, anyone who is in a position to introduce us, we want to talk to them about that. So we want to say, what do you think you need to say to him to pique his interest in hearing from me, right? How do you think he'll react to this introduction? What's going on in his world that's really important right now? How do we need to angle, or how do we need to talk about this? So, you know, to get you know what you want them to say about you, but you want to do that in context of how they know that person, right? What do they know about that person, and kind of put the two together. So
How about within the BNI environment? So we have our management, we were able to get some, you know, and obviously we keep it narrow and focused. And one of the things, one of my heroes, Jorge, that's on the call, had it always, you know, keep it specific to certain topics, right? Certain areas of what what the ask is about. But then it's to your point in getting so that how people introduce us, I guess, just comes, I'm thinking in the BNI environment, just by the comfort level that we all have with each other, and kind of understanding through those many weeks that we share bits of detail that what value our businesses offer to one another, and who might be possibly we refer to. So I don't know, it doesn't really go anywhere, but I'm thinking more in the BNI environment. I hear what you're saying. It's a much shorter window, and you know, the only way we get to that comfort level of being able to, obviously one is the respect one has, but it's through those weeks of being able to understand and hear. So I know exactly what Andrew does, and I know what programs in banking that are offered now, and through the government grants and the business grants. So it's you know, those. So I guess it's the collective of number of the meetings that we go through that we're able to gain that comfort level, confidence, and trust.
Right, it takes time.
Yeah, and hopefully some of these seminars are going to help with all of that with us too. So
yeah, it takes time for that to happen, and you know, you want to make sure that you're clear on how you like to be introduced, right? What do you want someone to say about you? What have you learned in your own business that's kind of the trigger points, or the things that if you say this or this, then it's probably going to spark that person's interest. Another way to think about this too is it depends a little bit on the relationship that the referral source has with the prospect, right? If you as a BNI member have a good relationship with someone, then you can say, look, just take his call. It'll be worth a conversation. Take her call, take his call, right? Do a 10-minute call. I know it'll be helpful, right? If you have a great relationship with that prospect, then you can say that. And that's a high trust kind of referral. That's a lot of borrowed trust, and that's really good. On the other hand, if you don't have that kind of relationship with a prospect when you're making this connection, then you know you got to know what to say. You got to know how to describe what anybody does, so they're going to at least pique their interest. Here's the way I think about referrals, and I'm going to have to run after this, but and I'll give you my email address if you have follow-up questions. When you're thinking about making an introduction, think about the Food and Drug Administration. When it's approving a drug for the market, generally speaking, I guess with COVID, they're rushing a few things through, but they want the drug to be safe and effective, right? Is it safe? Is it effective? Well, that's what we want for an introduction. Safe, we want people to feel comfortable making it, right? Whatever they say, whatever is received, are they comfortable? And effective, meaning is at least going to pique the interest of that prospect? Is it going to somehow strike them in a way that they're going to want to go the next step from this introduction? And so that's kind of the overarching principles you want to think about in making introductions. So, hey, Jim, I hope this was a little bit helpful, maybe a little affirming what you already know, maybe a twist or something on some new stuff.
indeed.
Good. Remind me, I'll send that little report on the introductions.
Yeah.
I'll send the link to the book. Thank you for bringing that up. And if you guys want to follow up with any questions, it's Bill Cates, C-A-T-E-S, not Bill Gates. We wish. Bill Cates at referralcoach.com.
So great. Bill,
right.
thank you so much. And we really appreciate
Bill.
it.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Happy
All right.
Take care.
Peace and blessings of the season, and happy Easter
Same to you.
and happy Passover, whatever we're celebrating.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Unless you
Jimmy.
want to
Take
talk a
care.
little more. Andrew, you're doing loan applications, I'm sure.
Now listening properly, and
Yeah.
it was a really good discussion, and I think a lot of the takeaways are surrounding the specificity of those referrals, and also I think just trusting in your referral sources. I think for us as referrers, being very candid and clear, and really advocating for those referrals, those introductions that we're making.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.